So this is the chassis. This is a Chinese Busse Bleeding Heart clone. And it even features the Busse Custom Shop logo. Now, I wouldn't normally go into a video like this and start it this way, but I hate this knife. I hate the very existence of this knife, and I intend today to disrespect this knife to the best of my ability, or maybe respect Busse to the best of my ability. I guess that depends on how you take it. We are going to take a Busse and chop through a chassis. Now, this is a long-term video. It's part of a whole playlist. I will have another video following up after this, so this is supposed to be a quick video. I don't know if that will happen or not. But part of the idea here is I'm going to send a piece of this knife to Peter's Heat Treat for a laser steel composition analysis. This knife is advertised as being DC53 high carbon. It's been outside for months now, in the rain, even in the grass and buried in the dirt. And the amount of corrosion that you see here is almost non-existent. So my guess is that this is 3 or 5 CR or something like that. And in my final video, when I know what steel it is, we'll go into an entire discussion on the Chinese knife market and the Chinese clone market, and what is good from China, because there are good things, and what is absolutely not good like this. But this is a custom Busse Nano Fusion Badger Attack. This was given to me by Kraken Tactical over in Australia. He's a custom knife maker. He does fantastic work. Really cool dude. This is one of my favorite knives, which is odd for me to say because the handle to blade proportions are a little bit odd. This is very much a full size, nice handle with a somewhat smaller blade. I did have to put my own edge across this, and after doing, there's still some nicks from previous edge testing there that was done over there in the upside down land. But anyways, really love this knife. So the idea here is we are going to pay homage to Busse by pounding this knife. Wow, that's some interesting lighting. Through this knife. Now, let me just say here, let's look at this setup. This is not ideal. This knife will likely be ruined. But the setup here, we've got a clamp. We've got this set up, we've got a clamp, we've got the knife screwed in here, and the problem here is this knife might be able to cut through that knife almost perfectly if I had a perfect press to go down with all other movements controlled. And that's what I'm trying to do here with the stand that I've got the other knife screwed onto. I'm trying to give some stability here while I'm doing this. However, since we're going to be using this as our hammer and it's not at all controlled, I do expect some significant edge damage to the Busse. But ultimately, this will just be another win, I would say, for Busse knives, or the Busse knife group, as we use it in some extreme use and abuse to chop through another blade. Let's get to it. Really quick, while I've got the knife apart, let's talk about what we see here. The handle scales were getting all goofy in my abusive testing. It was abusive, but not hyper abusive for what should be a Busse. And so where we started getting wonky was with breakage. This is like a plasticky plastic, not like Grivery that comes on the Beckers, but like cheaper plastic. We broke here and we broke out completely here. You know, for the price of the knife, I can't complain about that, but if you they are what they are. The hardware, a lot of times with Chinese knives, hardware is where you will run into issues and having standards. The hardware, I think, is actually decent enough, but that's not a normal Torx key head. It's some kind of weirder, sharper Jewish star doggone thing. So I guess that is what it is, kind of cheap quality, but it would be fine for whatever. And the plastic sheath, I don't believe that this is Kydex. It doesn't feel the same, but it's not bad, especially at this price point. And honestly, any production knife would probably be fine with a sheath like this. And we do have a full solid tang, no skeletonization whatsoever. So with that being said, let's move on from this particular blade. Hey, listen up. This content is not perfect. This video did not turn out the way that I wanted it to turn out. However, if you like seeing untied, unencumbered YouTube channels, if you like seeing content that is something more than a literal marketing paid for commercial from a giant company, consider checking out the description box below to see how you can support the channel. I have my own line of knives, Exodus Knife and Tool, made in the USA. No questions asked, lifetime warranty on standard options. I've got a Patreon, and I'm doing my best to share good information with y'all, so consider checking that out. Let's get you right back to the content. All right, so far, we certainly need larger screws. We also need a clamp here, and we're having some significant damage here. There's, I think, a lot more meat behind the edge on the chassis than there is on the Busse. And I had hoped that the Busse should be a little bit higher hardness, so have higher strength, and might make up for that and slice through here a little more efficiently. But that's not the case. Let's keep going. Round 2. Fight! So we're basically getting nowhere here, and I don't know if it would be cheating to start at a new portion of the edge on the Busse in the same divot as we were already cutting on the chassis, or maybe I should start both at new points, although they'll probably break at the old point. I don't know. Let's find out. When I put this together, I put where I was going to be hitting directly down onto this piece of old oak barnwood to support the edge, and I wanted all of the support to be directly under where I was hitting so we would have less lateral movement and more support. In retrospect, having this on top of a piece of steel would have been a better idea. So I guess I will go look for a piece of steel. Well, while we are here, let's just talk about something I just mentioned when it comes to manufacturing and tolerances. The handle scales likely broke and got all wonky because you'll notice all of the handle hardware, where the heck is it, is the same size, and yet not a single one of the hardware holes is the same size. They all look like they're intentionally drilled differently. Now someone's going to be like, you just wallered that hole out with your screws. A screw went here and a screw went there. And even if that were not the case, this is the original hole. Guys, there's no such thing as me faking that. It's just, look, you're not going to get something for nothing. You're paying nothing for this knife, and you're gonna, it's like stupid stuff like this is going to pop up, and there's going to be no support behind it from the manufacturer. You've heed your last haw, partner. Right in the nose. All right, so the knife is broken. I will be sending this off to Peters for a chemical composition analysis here. We will see what steel this actually is. And we have a few things to talk about. I'm going to try and do it rather quickly here. I want this to be a brief synopsis because this was not what this video was supposed to be. Yes, I am at fault for a lot of things being wrong in this video. I understand that. However, let me just say really quick, firstly, there's no replacement for displacement, and ultimately, even though we should have had more strength from the Busse due to higher hardness, we have more mass in the chassis, and we have likely more toughness in the chassis due to the lower hardness. Okay, so nobody talks very much about strength. Strength is a resistance to cracking. Doggone it. Strength is a resistance to deformation, rolling, bending. Toughness is a resistance to cracking. All right, so if we want to have a knife that holds a good edge, we need enough hardness to give us enough strength to actually hold that edge without it just bending over and flopping over. And believe it or not, there are some knives on the market that I think would fit, with proper edge geometry, fit that bill. They're so soft that with a proper edge on them, the edge can just flop over. On the flip side, we want to run that hardness up to a point until cracking starts being a problem, and then we want to back it off slightly. Now, where the balance is depends on the use of the knife, but in this case, this knife was not meant for banging edge to edge against another knife. No knife is. Therefore, the heat treat and hardness was not optimized to that task. Not only that, but we have a full flat grind that is very practical, shallower spine thickness, and this knife had more torsion on it, more lateral forces and stuff like that, because I was just holding it while the other knife was more secure. Therefore, it cracked. But it's maybe a demonstration of toughness versus strength. The other thing I want to mention really quick, you should baton your knife. Now hear me out. The chassis was shot twice. First time up here, second time down here, and yet it broke over here. Now there's no specific stress risers across the spine right there, but it's very likely that that is where the knife was resting on the doggone wrench, and we've got stress fractures that popped up at these points, and stress risers, especially on the blade, that popped up at these points so that it broke outside of where it was actually shot. Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't break there anyways, but don't ever baton a knife with something metal if you want to last, of course. But if you're batoning your knife every single winter with a certain popular brand, there pops up a whole bunch of posts. I barely did anything with this knife, and I've got these large semicircular chips out of the edge. And invariably, the owner will replace it, but say that you used the knife wrong. If your knife, if you never baton with normal batoning your knife, you could have stress fractures in your blade from the manufacturing process or from anything else and never know it until you need the knife, and it could fail with light use. Any survival or bushcraft intended knife should be able to handle being batoned with a piece of wood through a practical piece of wood for the rest of your life. So if you're doing practical batoning, you can know that it can handle that practical batoning. It should not do any severe damage to your knife. Whereas if you have a stress fracture in the knife and doing practical batoning breaks or damages it, you know that it was defective, which is why these warranties exist. When a knife breaks from practical batoning, it's not because you're using the knife wrong. They are covering it because it is a manufacturer defect, because that should not happen. Now, we'll move forward from this testing. We'll move our little butts right along here. I'll get this sent off to Peters, and we will finish this up with a full long-term review.